Carl, welcome to Inside the Chain podcast show. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for our guests, our listeners, and people watching, Carl, you're the Group Operations Director at Sertec Group, who are a multi-site automotive manufacturer. You're a smart factory and People and Skills Award winner. You've got Japanese-owned Tier 1 experience, OEM and JLR type exposure, and a fellow TMMX judge. So I'll start with our listener promise, and that's basically today we're going to hear how someone qualified by experience in old school fiery automotive has had to evolve from being the hero plant manager to building systems that work across multiple sites. You'll get practical stories on shop floor management, visual standards, poka-yoke and VAR, and on the personal side, how Carl uses reflection, reading, and even a burnout scorecard to stay effective. So the framing line for this episode, it's about moving from war rooms and firefighting to systems and thinking time. How you build production systems that don't collapse when the boss leaves the building, and how you stop burning out the people trying to hold it all together. So, again, thanks for being here, Carl. We'll jump into the questions, and I'll go back to when I'd introduced you at the start, and our listener promised that you describe yourself as QBE, qualified by experience, and talk about being punched in the face a few times by automotive. What did those early years in the old war room culture actually look like and feel like?
I mean, you're talking probably 20, nearly 30 years ago. Probably very aggressive. I always think the loudest person in that room came away with less activity. The quality manager, which was generally the quietest person in the room, reporting back issues, tended to go away with more problem solving to do themselves, and they didn't actually build a part. So I think it was more, if you could be data driven to fight your corner, then you came away with less. The only issue happened that during that period, though, was the business didn't get any better. Silos got better at putting walls up and defending their own kind of section and department, really. And the better you got at it, meant the less work you had as a department, and it was almost like, it was seen to be okay. And being young and impressionable at the time, you learn by your kind of peers and the surroundings. So I think the war room, we used to have red dots on the floor to stand there when you spoke. You had the feet to make sure you were in the right place in the room. They were pretty, I can say now, because I've lived through it, that there's a better way of doing things. Absolutely. Did it shape my career and help me? Absolutely. So I'm kind of like a little bit, do I advocate war rooms? If you run them properly and you open and you listen to the voices in the room, then absolutely. But if you're going to use them for a kind of a stick to kind of, persecute people, absolutely.
Beating up session. Yeah, that's not what it's about.
Yeah. We used to talk years ago about who was going to get like the pineapple and stuff. So there's been a problem, and who's going to take that in the review, and it became very much like a game, but nobody wins. Only the business doesn't win with that behaviour. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not looking at the correct action. You're just looking at self-preservation from a department, and I think that was the way it used to be 30 years ago. Very hostile.
Yeah. But thankfully, not so. I'm sure that still exists in some areas, but it's great when we get. There are those baptisms of fire, aren't there? That there is a lot to be learned, and not least of all the steeliness. But to be able to progress and move on, moving away from that pretty fiery to say the least. So these days a bit calmer. When we spoke, you said you've seen that people have upskilled.
Yes.
Part of that. Could you say what's generally changed in how the industry behaves when things go wrong?
I think now, one of the things I learned a good few years ago, probably in the transition from the war room into kind of like Gemba walks and shop floor management, was that, it's E plus R equals O for me. The event plus the response equals the outcome you'll get in life. Now, you can live in that event and you can spend time deliberating the event, but really it's your response to that event that's going to get you somewhere. And I think our kind of mantra over the last probably 8 years at Sertec is, we don't want repeats. So if you can learn from an event, put some good PCA in place so you've got the permanent corrective actions in place, then your life gets to be easier, surely. And it's convincing people that, that mature approach is correct. We don't want to be firefighting. So, and look, I'm in manufacturing. You're going to get problems. You can't think of every eventuality. I know the customer would like you to think of everything, but sometimes in reality, in manufacturing, a part's going to be made wrong. Then you've got to understand how to fix it, but ultimately how it doesn't happen again. And that can happen a couple of ways. Repeats are the ones I don't tolerate. Personally, because it means if we haven't got a hard countermeasure and it's only a soft countermeasure temporarily, we haven't communicated the issue well enough for people to understand the why, and that needs to happen. Or you haven't done the full hard countermeasure that you think you've done, or you haven't got to the root cause. You've had sometimes what happens in 8Ds, people think that's the problem. They go straight to it, fix it, and then you're going to repeat and you go, but you didn't understand what the problem was. So I think a lot of maturity now around, and I see it in a lot of, not just Sertec and not just people, I see it a lot in managers that were a similar age to me, that, everyone goes on a journey, and if we can share some of our knowledge through that period to make them stronger moving forward. That's why I do a lot of work with the early careers, the next gen of Sertec, because, if we can show them how to do things properly now, learn from the experience. I always say, if you can, you're the most of them quality far more talented than I am, and if I can give some of my wisdom and share some of my knowledge with their ability, then they should be pushing a lot higher than where I'm working, if you know what I mean, in terms of positions I've got to. So yeah, it definitely is a maturity change, and people have grown up, and you definitely see that now.
Yeah, more use of those softer skills, and I love that positioning as well around training that next generation, and let's be better teachers than we had when we were taught. You like the James Clear line. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Which,
I love it.
Just love it. Yeah. When did it hit you that being a brilliant plant manager wasn't enough anymore? When was that?
It really hit home probably halfway through, probably last year. I think I've done a good job of looking after plants. I consider myself to be fairly good at it. The issue that I kind of became apparent to was, when you go to group and you own more than one plant, being good in one plant, it's the scalability, sustainability, scalability of the projects to make sure you get that Sertec DNA throughout the business. And I think that was like my kind of reflection was, how am I going to move forward? We've won the smart factory, we won people and skills. How do we transpose that and scale it into a Sertec Group standard? And I think that's where kind of I was doing a bit of research, and I kind of read that quote and thought it was, at the same time, one of our customers, I like to show off and get people around our plants, because it lets the people in the shop floor have some pride in what they're doing. So I'm not, if anyone says, can I come to your factory? Absolutely. When do you want to come? Now. So it's not an issue. But I think we did a session where we let the customer use our strategy room, and we did a shop floor tour. But when I was presenting, I got asked a bit of what I thought at the time was a strange question. What I think about now is actually perfectly normal. But he said, how do you know if you're winning or losing? And how mature is your site? And them questions, I was like, oh, come and have a walk round. But then when you think scalability and, how do you move it forward? What is our maturity score? What is our lean maturity score? And that's what got me really, I'm a very curious kind of person. So once that conversation, and had I not had that benchmarking on that day, I wouldn't have had that conversation, and I wouldn't have moved forward in a different direction towards what we're building now, because you don't know what you don't know. And you benchmark and talk to different people to see what you're doing and stuff. I know we're on a right path because the plant gets a lot of good reviews and we're winning lots of awards, but there's a bigger, maturer world out there. And if you don't rub shoulders with the right people, then you don't get to learn some of their little gems and nuggets of their experience. So yeah,
absolutely.
To listen to people and you know,
yeah, that listening, as you say, outside, people are not part of that normal business. Maybe from even a different sector. There's so much to be learned, isn't there, from others? But as we've spoke about prior to this show, that reflective nature just shone through, and that's where that growth piece is. You've built the Sertec production system to knitting shop floor management together across sites. What problem were you really trying to solve, and what does the system actually look like in practice day to day then? From where you were maybe as a single site to how it looks now multi-site.
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer of rigor and routine, really. So people need to know what's expected each day. When you have customers, and rightfully so, if you are causing problems, they want answers that are quick. To do that, sometimes you have to approach a top-down kind of approach to it, which is ultimately the wrong way of doing it. But when time is against you and you can't slow time down, you've got to act quick and give some feedback. What we've done really with the shop floor management is that gives the team leaders the empowerment to be able to run their areas, and we support them by walking the floor with them to understand and listen to them. It's not, we want to encourage them to do their own problem solving. If time is against them now, then we can help speed things up and work with them. But without a shop floor management system in place and a Gemba area for them to show if they're winning or losing, and if you can tell within 1, 3 or 10 seconds where the problem is, where it belongs and what they're doing about it, then you can see quite easily some of the team leaders that where you can help. And it's, like I said already, you don't know what you don't know. And when you do the first walks, you realize some of the team leaders, they've got to their position by being good operators. They need to know now. And that's what the SPS does. The SPS teaches them the next level above. So you've got standard ops, you've got things to do properly, business management systems. The shop floor management helps them to be able to articulate properly on safety, quality, delivery, and cost, how well their area is performing. And then if we need to help out, really. So, I think that's probably the kind of biggest area of influence, where if you can get that bottom-up approach across the Gemba, you're getting somewhere. And you won't like it when you hear it the first few times, because the shop floor rebel, another management regime coming in, or they're not going to do anything, they're not going to fix anything. But I think it's about the data, and once you can present the data in the right way, it becomes powerful for them. And I think it's just getting them over the hill to realize that data, not emotion. You can run around screaming, saying it's I've told everyone, but then when you break it down and say, you said you told everyone. Okay, take me through it. Who have you told? And then you go, well, you haven't told the right person, because you've gone here. So, and that's where you can help them then and make sure they are talking to the right people. And also the coordinators and production manager in the same walk. So at that point, if they see that, then you can have a quiet conversation afterwards and say, I think you probably need a support there, because they're a little bit, they don't know who to talk to. So can you sort that out? That's the way I think it works. And it's all on the job training, but that's where the production system comes in. And the James Clear quote, I don't want it to be on the job training. It needs to be on the job. Plus there's some methodology behind it, which means when good people get promoted and move on, they don't cause massive holes that they've created because, Fred used to do that. That's the way he used to do it. It's like, right, so why isn't it the way Sertec did it? Why is it the way Fred did it? Or Fred stopped pressing that emergency button every day, that panic button, and he's not here anymore pressing it. So he's all, who's pressing the button? Oh, nobody's pressing the button. Right. How did we not know he weren't pressing the button? So I think all of them systems are just how we can make it less stressful for team leaders and group leaders and coordinators and managers, and give them that safe space to be able to, articulate how well the lines go. Look, if the line's not running very well, it isn't their fault. It's the line's not running well. How can we all get the line running better? But I think for a long time, the pressure's put down onto the team leader on, and he has all that problems going, I can't fix all this. I'm not maintenance. I'm not this. And I'm being blamed for everything. And it's like, no one's here to blame. We're here to understand, single source of truth. What is wrong with your line, and how can we facilitate you? So yeah, really empowering the team leader is probably the change point.
Yeah, that really shines through, like moving away from that top down fixes, sort of autocratic, as you said, jumping up and down.
Yeah,
old school approach to that empowerment and that bottom up daily problem solving, so that 80-90% of those problems are dealt with by an upskilled team, an upskilled guy was an operator, is now a team leader.
You've got to push it to the right levels of responsibility. And if you go up too high first, you haven't got it they haven't solved their own problems, and you want to save space for them to have a go with time. And when time comes out, then you can help and speed things up, really. So it's really pushing. And a lot of the managers need to learn to do that, because when they become managers, they still want to do their old job and the new job. So, they're constantly kind of going, well, I can do that. You go, but why should you do that? And the questions have got to change a little bit for them, where they've got to be asking questions like, well, what would you do? If you're always giving solutions, and I'm guilty of that more than anybody in my career, because I've came from shop floor to where I am now. So I'm more than, people can learn from my mistakes, if you know what I mean. We have to change. And if I give everyone the answer to everything, then I'll be the busiest person in Sertec. And as you move up to group level now, and you've got 4 plants to look after, I've got to, I have to reflect each week on making sure that I am pushing back and not accepting more workload, because ultimately the responsibility lies at plant level, and then the area level, and then the shop floor level. So it's within the organisation, everyone's got to realise, push it back where the problem lives, and if they can't fix, that's when you help.
Yeah, love it. And I mean, we've touched upon this. I'll use the word deliberately. You tell me you're deliberately still old school with pens, papers, coloured crosses. Despite you've won the Smart Factory Awards. That always it's going to have its place, and that's for the future. But why do you insist upon that? Why do you insist upon that before the digitisation? I've got my own ideas, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think I'm old school, that I recognise the value. Paper and pen is quick and easy. You don't need PC experience. So, have you had a good day yesterday? Did you have any safety issues? No. Or colour it in green. Move on. If you've had an issue, start to articulate how you're getting on. So I think it's for me, it's disciplined thoughts, disciplined actions, and technology is always the enabler. But you cannot jump to technology first. All of the people I've worked for in the last 30 years will always say, if you can just get the computer to do that for me. But we'd be running around making changes to absolutely everything if we all did that, because that one little mod plus the next little mod, and before you know it, you'd be in a tailspin of just change. So my big direction at the moment to the team is level up. I want group stand-up and shop floor management, paper and pencil. There will be an activity next year where we can think about how we can digitize, but we can't lose the 1-3-10 kind of principle. You need to be able to see that area. Is there a problem? If there is, where's it stemming from? And what's the permanent corrective action that's being worked on? And if you can't identify that in 10 seconds of walking somewhere, then we've got a problem. So the digitization will come. I'm a bit of an ogre, and I'm kind of kicking back saying, stop going. I know the younger generation want to digitize, but I'm saying, look, until we can go in, fully make sure that all the group are all got the methodology correct of shop floor management. Now I've inherited 2 more plants. If I go to digitize, we'll lose some of the importance. And sometimes the computer can't always go inside what how we'd like people to behave. I'm sure it will eventually, but sometimes we've got some small little tricks and Gemba games that kind of help you manage. And if you go digitize, do you lose some of that? And I'm sure the answer will be no. But certainly at the moment, as smart as we are at doing a lot of really good, cool stuff, I definitely think, paper and pen is best until you've got it completely nailed. But when I say got it kind of nailed, have you got the methodology behind it so it can stand up on its own 2 feet? If you've just put something in and you've walked around every day for 6 months and said it's in, it won't be in when you move on. Yeah. So that's my real kind of my direction really for the team. Yeah, we can digitize, just not in the next year. until we get all 4 plants absolutely group standard, and then we'll look at how we can make things more efficient.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, been just that. Oh, yeah, pen, paper, colour date, and it is straight away. Something happens there. It's on the board. Anybody walking past can see it. Not go away.
I was
I
having
get
a chat with a few of our senior management team only this week, and I said it. Ever since I've worked, I've always harvested data. No matter what level I've gone to, it's a different type of data. But every day when I come in, I might do 5 or 10 minutes studying of data, and then I will trend it and record it. And I think it's really important to have that sense. But as you move up the ladder, you choose your priorities become a different type of sense. And everyone needs them kind of plates that you kind of touch. If you choose to delegate everything, that's the hard bit. That's the bit that I certainly haven't got to yet. So I always like to keep but as I've gone up, I've always thinned down what it is I'm looking at as a sense, because, let's say data makes the briefcase heavy, insight makes you rich. And if you haven't got the data around you and you haven't harvested it, and that's what I said to the team, if you harvest data, you can make decisions. If you get asked the question, you've got no data around you, then you've got to go and find it. So ultimately, I'd always say to some of the team as well, act or be acted upon in life. I never like being acted upon. My character doesn't like being acted upon. So my boss, I need to make it so my boss doesn't act upon me, because I'm constantly doing stuff and staying ahead of the curve.
Staying ahead of the curve, yeah.
And that's what I say to the team. You've got to harvest data, look at the signals, and use that intelligently, really. So yeah, that's why I love old school paper and pen, because I still do it myself each day. I must spend, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes of my day is all about that. Sorry about that.
And I mean that's a good segue into and sort of linked in a way about influence and ways of thinking. You told me that you've been influenced by A3 thinking, Edward de Bono's 6-hat thinking. Got them over there myself. Matthew Syed's black box thinking. How have those ideas changed the way you run problem solving and meetings?
I think firstly, Matthew Syed's book Black Box Thinking is a must for anyone to read. The level of detail and how they look at aviation versus NHS is staggering, really. And I think I've always been a person who wants to kind of push themselves and learn new stuff and that. So I'm really curious. And we've realized now, the more we don't do body and white metal parts and you do more technical EV components, you can't solve the problems with the same thinking you had 20 years ago. And you can't be the loudest voice in the room, because the quiet people who probably know the answer won't talk. When I read the Ed de Bono book, I thought that was really good in terms of, at the start, what is the clean data? And a lot of my team now hear me keep talking about, single source of truth and clean data. And I will be the foghorn for that terminology, because when we're talking to each other, we go, is that really clean? Is it? Or are you swaying towards an opinion now? If it's an opinion, it's in the next box. But we're here at the moment. I think the idea of solving the problem at the same time before you move on to solution mode, because what happens in a meeting generally is they go on far too long, and all throughout the meeting, people are having different ideas of getting to the problem. But do you actually know what the problem definition is? And what facts do you have around you now to make decisions? And if someone's got a bit of an idea, well, that's not white thinking, you're into red now. So from that red kind of thinking, you've got to come away and bring back some data tomorrow or the next day, for instance. So can you convert your idea now into something factual? So I think that plus A3 is always great. Can you get onto one bit of paper, and can you get the effective evaluation of your problems to see if you're going in the right direction? Because you might solve a lot of problems, but not actually get to the root cause. But at least it shows the journey you're on as you're solving them problems. So I think I've spoken to our L&D management, and I think how we can combine kind of these 6 hats and A3 as a training module through our L&D is what we're currently kind of crashing together now.
Like it. That sounds good. I'd love to hear how that goes. And again, it's touching on that, passing on all that experience we've got, the skills that we've learned and the journeys and paths that we've taken, that they're all different, but so many similarities in a way in that you've been through a journey basically, haven't you? And if we can pass on to that next generation, what's worked for us, some of those good bits and good nuggets, we're sort of we're shortcutting part of that journey. There's nothing that takes, you can't shortcut experience at all. But if we can shortcut some of the good learning pieces, it makes it maybe quicker to get through that.
Absolutely.
And talking about people again and different paths. You mentioned your very red character when we look at it.
I still am very red. At least I know, but now I know I'm very red, so I can now.
Like similarly, I want to jump to solution mode, and it's difficult to reel that in, isn't it? It's something. Yeah. Take a physical. Stop what you're doing, Matt. Stop what you're doing, Carl.
Yeah.
Let's run the process on this. So how do you stop yourself and your team? I mean, I think we have touched upon that.
One of the things, though, Matt, is
to those things.
I think one of the things really is because I am an advocate of seeing something good, and I'll become that kind of mouthpiece. Because I'm red, that's me. But because I've been talking about clean data and white thinking and get to the single source of truth, they actually correct me during reviews. You're in solution mode, Carl. It's just that subtle one where you go, yeah, you're really right. You are. Let's start. So I think, I think the more I will always, I'll read something and then I'll be talking about something else. And I always want to stay relevant, always read the books and the material to learn, that curiosity. But I've never been scared to teach. I don't want to hold. I've always said that when I retire, I don't want to retire. I want to maybe go to some kind of part-time working. It'd be criminal to work in manufacturing for 40, 50 years and not give back. So whenever I can give back, each time I take a milestone, a reflection, I can then give that back to the team so they can learn from some of my mistakes and some of the things I'm learning. There's no point in me learning from myself. Nobody benefits from me trying to be. I want to be the best version of Carl Milbourne, of course I do, but I don't want it to be that I've made the best version of myself, but you haven't made a difference to the manufacturing sector or the business you're working in, because that'd be absolutely criminal. That's why I'm so passionate about the next gen, because they are our future. But so I will still want to learn in my own learning style. I've got my own strange learning style. So audio books. I don't like reading. I tend to forget after the second page what I've just read. The audio books in the car,
they work. Yeah,
a bit more efficient. I can get that 25 minutes in, and it's good. I can relate to it. Holiday. There's one of the Matthew Syon book that I'm gonna be going through and stuff. So audiobook all the way makes it a bit easier, and share the knowledge. Because I think in every audiobook I will read, I guarantee there's always about 3 or 4 really good bits of takeaway that you can then use in your daily role or even at home and stuff. So
it's a bit more salient, isn't it? And you get to that the nub of it and the crux of it and a little bit more quickly. And I'm with you in that it suits me that I just want to get there nice and quickly. And if it's making sense and I can follow that process and then it normally sticks in and amongst everything else, and we find sort of where it fits in with existing learning or where it fits in with the work that we have in front of us. Similarly, I think I'd follow a similar learning approach there. I need to hang it into a system and something that's real to make it relevant for me. So yes, obviously we talked about that. The Gemba, for people who don't know what Gemba is, it's the Japanese word for sort of, well, I know it as go where the work is done. You don't manage operations from an ivory tower, do you? Going back to the dark old days, the good old bad old days of how things used to be run, but it's been there and being visible, isn't it? And that visual management piece, we've discussed that on several points, and the red green ratings, making it visible, risk rating cells you've spoken about. If you're walking around, what does a factory, not necessarily your own, if you were on a judging panel, for instance, what does good visual management look like when you walk into a plant?
I think for me, when you walk in, you've got to know how well the plant's performing. I think that's kind of key. I know some people are sometimes scared of showing their their metrics for visits and stuff because they've had a problem. But I think, you've got to be mature enough to know that, every day it's a journey, isn't it? It's like a sat nav, isn't it? You might go the wrong way, but does the sat nav turn off and turn the volume down? Don't help you anymore. It will course correct you and get you where you're going. So I think for me, having a scorecard, I call it good day, bad day, and good plant, bad plant. When you walk into a plant, can you tell it's been a good day yesterday or a bad day? And that's an honest reflection. Can you see it? If you can see that, okay, it's been a bad day yesterday, but are they a good plant? Well, let's have a look at the metrics. Let's have a look at the last 3 years trending in that area. They're on a downward trend, reduction. They've had a little bump in the road. It's manufacturing. So I think, can you tell good day, bad day? Can you tell good plant, bad plant? Then I think really, is it organised? Sometimes I walk around many plants and I can't get there. The walkways disappear. I don't mean they're worn. They're just someone hasn't thought that. How do you get to the next bit? And you go, well, I can't go anywhere. And you can make a point of it and stand there and go, where do we go? They're like, there you go. We're going to walk in the road. They're like, what? Oh. And I think that's sometimes that fresh eyes. People get used to kind of making their own ways. I think you need to be able to see shop floor management. You need to be able to go to areas and tell how organised it is. If you call a team leader in to have a discussion with a client, customer, supplier, then you want that team leader to be talking confidently about the bits they're making and how they're performing. So yeah, you want machinery that's looked after, that's it's purring and stuff. When you walk through the door. So yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of like when I was in logistics many years ago, I created like a poster campaign, and it was about logistics in terms of your arteries. Logistics, the roads are like arteries; they need to be free flowing with blood and not clogged. And whatever plant I've worked in, I put a measure in place called gangway congestion, and I'll get one of the apprentices to walk around on a site map and record how many places there's something's not moving. And then from that, you can then create scatter charts and work out what you're doing about the areas. But you can tell from a factory if it's flowing well, if it hasn't got stuff stuck in the gangways, and if drivers are driving past stuff. And it's even worse when they drive around stuff to get to stuff they're trying to get to. At that point, you can just look straight away and go, yeah, that's not a mature enough factory yet. There's a bit of work to do. But look, there's solutions to all this, and it starts off doing gangway congestion. Why are you putting it where you're putting it? I've got nowhere else to put it. Okay, let's have a look at the layout and work out, is there too much stock somewhere? But ultimately, you've got to be able to ask that question first. Things don't live in roads. And if you could, why? And it doesn't take long to get to that mindset, but you want to, the biggest thing when you go to a factory is that management by walkabout. MBWB. Yeah. If I'm on a tour with a customer and I see something wrong, I'm not going to not say something, hope he don't spot it or she don't spot it. I will address that situation where you see it. And if that customer then thinks, oh, Carl's got a problem, it's like, well, yeah, but he's honest enough to see it and say, we need to fix that, rather than hoping you don't see it and hoping we don't talk about it. I mean, sometimes that's my style. I'm very transparent. So if I'm not very good at something, I don't mind telling people we're not very good at it, because it's like most things. If you don't know you've got a problem, you're never going to try and solve your problem. If you try and be a politician and sometimes skirt over the issue and try and talk around it, you never actually get to what you're trying to fix. So yeah, sometimes I'm probably too honest sometimes, but ultimately that's, it's my job to get to operational excellence. And if we're not honest in each area, you're never gonna get to operational excellence if you're hiding that metric and you're not talking about that metric.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything we've spoken about here. That end goal is operational excellence, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's enough here to write a damn fine book on how to get to operational excellence. But I'm going to push you for just the final few questions. And I love this one when you told me about it. You've implemented a VAR system. I loved it. And as soon as you started telling me about it, it made so much sense. So, like football VAR, to catch sequence errors and one-off defects caused by distraction.
Yes.
Can you talk through how that works and what it's changed in quality and behaviour?
Yeah, I think, as you said already, distraction is probably the biggest key failure for making bad parts. Nobody comes to work to make a bad part. Distraction causes the bad part. Having a process that goes from A to C, where they missed the B out. So you take him from whip, you miss the operation out because someone's distracted you, you put it in the finished good, and then the customer's got that one-off. And it's that one-off that you can never quite answer.
Yeah.
How do you make a one-off? And if you talk to people, they'll say, oh, I don't make it, not on my shift. I wouldn't do that. So then we started to look at VAR, and VAR is, we always say it's PCA, not NDA. We're a unionized company, and we have cameras for VAR, but we use it for permanent corrective action, not disciplinary action. So we will show the video back to the employee, and they'll go, oh no, I didn't make that mistake. Okay, that's fine, because the idea of VAR is the light guards and the sequence loads will stop that pallet going into finished goods stores. And there'll be a VAR studio, just like the football. And when that light guard is broken, the camera will be recording 30 seconds pre and post the event. The VAR studio will be able to watch the footage. And sometimes it might be that we've laid a sail down too tight and the operator's arm keeps catching the light guard. And then they'll watch the video and they'll go, I think we need to make the light guard a bit further away, because if somebody's 6 foot tall, their elbow's touching it. So it's getting rid of them repeat errors to make it so, the boy cried wolf. When the light guard breaks, it's because there's been a sequence. So since we've done that now, and then I couldn't sleep at night when it come to, I'd got VAR, I'd got a studio, they're on 3 shifts, but if I can see what Matt said in the morning and I've got that time, I may just choose the answer you chose. Logical. And how our CI manager made it, you could see the judgment. So in the end, we made that invisible. So now once a month, he's got a KPI in place where he can check the 3. And if he's got 2 saying good and 1 saying bad, then he can then review the footage and go, actually, the bad call was correct, the other 2 were wrong, or why did the bad call happen when actually the footage was good? So we can do a lot. And you can put proper corrective actions in place when you know how that part's been built. And I'll give you an example. We made a half-built part on a jig that you have to transfer from one half of the jig to the other. And when I came to that concern, and it happened to be the last part they put in the box with the light guard breaking, but because it was the last part, he pushed it down the track. And when the setter came, he didn't check the part and he assumed and he reset. A question I asked is, why didn't we build the part in 2 pieces? Why do I make it half built? Surely that jig should be able to make it in one go with how we. So in the end, the team redesigned the jig, and you can make it in one piece now. So there is no half-made part being carried between station to station now. So I think a lot of it gets you it controls your work. You don't ship forward, which is great, but you can really then see how a bad part's made. And it's that, when I talk to the quality manager, he always says the same. He said, them one-offs for years have been a problem. And now the one-offs we can see internally before the customer, and we can really get to the correct, the correct problem.
This is it. Likewise, I've been around the block.
Would say.
I've been around the block in manufacturing and engineering as you have. Those one-offs that he said, she said, and you've got no evidence. It hurts, doesn't it, to be able to accept that I don't know, I don't know, but to come up, I really mean it. It really stood out to come up with a solution like that, and it, as you explained there, pointing you into fixing that process. Why is it in 2 bits? Go make the process foolproof. Take the errors out of the process. You've got to have that have the confidence as well to say, I'm going to invest in that change as well.
You got to be curious, because when I asked that question, why is it in 2 bits? They went, because you can't make it like that. I said, well, why? It looks like you can to me. And just by me being curious, asking why, they went away and said, you know what, we can. I went, well, I know you can. It looked logical to me. Why did they make it in 2 stages? But we've got to get better in operations at challenging these kind of, when it comes to your first trial, why is it in 2 bits? Because you need to. Well, okay, well, that could cause an intervention, could cause a half-built part. We don't want to sell a half-built part. Okay, well, how do you get rid of that? So there's lots of things and the good thing is with the lessons learned, you've got to feed everything back to your RFQ. So if I don't want 2 stages in a process and I don't define that in the RFQ, I'm just going to be talking about the same.
Call it next project. Yeah.
I call it stamp collecting, and there's no point me collecting all these stamps and saying I told you so at every new model. We need to drive all these improvements back down to the standard, and then validate it when it comes in that it's to the correct standard. Because if we, when we choose to walk, it's like a walk past nothing kind of approach, isn't it? When you choose to walk past something, it's a problem, and you've got to sometimes stop and say, this could take me half an hour home being late today because I can't not walk past something. I've got to stop and go, what is that? And I think if you've got that nature and you're curious and you're asking why, I think the place will be, your factory will be a lot better every day you're in it if you're making them small changes. But it's them small changes and that mindset shift of challenging and being curious and having VAR now just means we can be, a lot more data driven in terms of the solutions. So
and you made another superb point, and we've all seen that part, the poor feedback loop, or it's not a feedback loop, is it? If it doesn't get fed back and actually used, take that change, take what you've learned in a process, and for goodness sake, make sure it informs that the start of that supply chain process piece again. Start at the very beginning. Stop ironing in bolts from the start because you've learned it over here. Bloody well.
Soon as my team turn around and say, "Look at this car, it's brilliant," and I go, "I love it. Is it in the RFQ?" And I go, "No." I go, "Well, it's point me love. I'm going to love it, but it's an island of excellence now. Unless you convert that island of excellence into the RFQ, I'm going to walk past next time on a different model and go, that thing you showed me last year, it's not on here." They go, I don't know. Operations need to feed back the RFQ. If we're updating our RFQ properly with procurement, then what you buy next time, it'll have that standard. So it's keeping that loop moving up and not constantly going back 3 years going, we've made the same mistake again. So I think, that's the key to it.
Brilliant. I'm going to move on to my last couple of questions. And reflection, burnout, and Genki vampires. But reflection and burnout.
SPOs.
And the SPOs. Yeah. The reflection piece. You're so interested in data that absolutely comes across, but it's data with a purpose. Absolutely. The journey that you've been on, when you told me that you built yourself a 10 question sort of burnout scorecard to help keep you in the right place, to help you stop hitting that cliff face, the cliff edge, even plotting it like it's an ops chart, linking the dips to events, to the pay deals, to the shutdowns. What have you learned about yourself and your work from tracking it that way? Not least of all that's the love, that's how you work and operate. So it just makes sense, doesn't it, in one respect?
Yeah, I think. Look, I talk about stuff quite a lot, and I was going through my new role and 6 months transition and things that I'm working on, and somebody said to me, "How do you know if you're going to burn out?" And my kind of, at the time, I turned around and said, "Well, I haven't done it in 30 years, so I'm not planning to." But I think then that gave me, and somebody said, "Do you journal?" I said, "Well, no, I don't journal." But my brain, when someone says, "Do you journal?" If I write something down every day, I can't really do anything with that information apart from I can get it off my chest that day and journal. So this is where the operational head came in and went, well, if I go through some questions weekly, I do weekly scorecards and operational exec summaries to the CEO. So I'm thinking, well, while I'm doing that and reflecting, why don't I reflect about how well I've behaved during the week, whether I've got frustrated. So I first started creative, but like most things, if you don't share and talk to people, well, I was talking to the learning development manager and she said to me, but maybe personal stuff could also cause you to burn out, Carl. Have you thought of that? And I went, well, actually, no, I'm so much in worker mode. So now we've created the kind of scorecard that looks at what's happening around my whole life during that week. And as I always talked already about harvesting data, I set a threshold of burnout as, say, 70%. And if I might go lower than that for 2 or 3 weeks and go, I'm not burnt out. So then I can reduce the threshold and go, well, okay, I'm feeling fine. If I did feel burnt out, and I can look back at that trend and say, well, I was dealing with a really tricky situation, either personally or professionally, for a couple of weeks. And that's why my motivation or my wanted to come to work dipped. So I think really what I'm really interested in now is I've started to harvest the data. I'm kind of 4 or 5 weeks in. I think, like most things, you've got to let it become a bit more mature. I think when it gets to next year, you should be able to look at them trends and say, and just like KPIs, water level needs to come up or down.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I've also added the well-being side because I was quite keen on the personal stuff. So I've also trending now how many runs I've done, how many steps I've done per week, just because also as a personal kind of goal, you know, you've got to you've got, for me, I have to feel healthy. If I'm working and feeling healthy, my work life becomes that bit more bit easier. If I don't do any running, then all of a sudden I start getting frustrated, and that can then tip into your worker mode. So I think just having that little balance to go, I want to do 3 runs a week. I only did 2. Okay, well, score yourself lower, reflect on it. And, you know, the next week you might do 4 or you do 3. But I think, like anything, you know, you've got to set some goals, set some markers in place. And I think really how that whole turned into a bit of an operational game for me. I showed a few of my team and they're kind of like, wow, I need to do that. So I don't mind sharing. That's the key point. If I'm doing something myself and I see a benefit to someone in my team, I'll say, well, I'll show you what I'm doing. This is what I do, you know. You could use it. You don't have to use it. I would like to know over a year, have I dipped in the way I'm feeling, whether it's work related or home life related, a combination of both. But I want to be able to pinpoint it and say, you know, that pay deal that went on for like 4 or 6 weeks, that was really hard. But then I'm going to go, pay deal's coming in 2 years. I want to put some more procedures in place so that doesn't become really hard, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And I love the overlaying it with the personal well-being. I know when I've been at the 12-hour days, 80-hour weeks, and then I stop training, and I'm not going to say it's just because it's hard work, but maybe because the training stops because it gets eaten by time, let's say, that's partly the impact. Maybe I need to reduce it to a 70 and keep my 10 hours of training, because that means I can manage it. But
even if you spend like DIY is quite funny. I journaled, I haven't done enough DIY. That was stressing me out because I wanted to do some DIY in that week at home and I didn't get anything done. So one of the questions are, you know, have I said yes or no? Have I said yes to something I didn't want to do? And have that honest from yourself. Did I say yes when I should have said no? Because if I'm not mature enough to know, you know what, should have said no. I want to do some DIY and I didn't do it, then that frustrates you because you haven't got it done. So there's lots of things that come in your, you know, have you done more extended hours this week than you should have? And you go, well, I want to do some DIY. I got stuck involved in that project. I did too many hours, didn't get the DIY done. And you just feel a bit kind of like deflated. Whereas if you do the good work, do the DIY, do a bit of fitness, and then everything's a bit higher. So I think really it's just the data and the harvesting will come, and hopefully I'll create a model for myself for the next, I don't know, I'm 50 now, so next 15 years of how I can kind of relate to, or 17 years maybe.
And you can't beat data. You can't beat data and a bit of research. So it starts there. Well done, sir. And the last question we'll close on: the SPOs, success prevention officers, you taught me about, and a great chap on, I think it was an Alistair Bryce lecture some years back through the IMechE, and I forget the chap's name. I will find it out and I'll see if I can drop it into the comments here somewhere when this gets launched. But the Genki vampires explained to me, those people, you know who they are, or you go into a business, find out who they are. They suck the energy. Genki, it's another Japanese word, but they suck that energy out of teams, out of change. For anyone leading operations and supply chain, how do you spot them, and what's the best way to deal with them?
It's a really good question, because I think, success prevention officers, look, everyone's going to have an opinion, and I think how you control your meeting to get the openness out and get everyone talking, because what you don't want, I think the SPOs are there kind of because not everyone's, sometimes actually they've got the right attitude because they can see a warning sign, and we think they're being SPOs, for instance, because they don't like our idea. I think a lot of it stems from that openness in the meetings to be able to get everyone's opinion across. So you're almost, if you know someone is a bit of an SPO, then you, in that meeting, you can kind of let's hear your viewpoint now at the start. Let's get your worries out, and we can iron your worries out. Instead of it being halfway down the track, 6 months in, and you've got an SPO saying, "Oh, I've been telling them for 6 months not to do that." And so I think really, and I think how that Ed De Bono book with the 6 hats, I think that's the one, because the SPOs, he's got his hat on, but actually at the start you need the white hat on. What is the data telling us first? And I think if you all move on in that kind of way, and look, I'm not saying we're an expert at 6 hats, because we're not. That's why our R&D department are going to build that model with the A3 thinking, and they've done a really good job so far from what I've seen. So that'll take a good few years to train out, develop, and it become the norm. But I think, SPOs are there. Some are there for the right reasons, and some are there just because they like to whinge a bit. There's obviously some reason why most people aren't happy with something, and I think if you can get it in that right forum to discuss it first and not run off too quick. So I think slow down, everyone in the room, talk about it, but get the presence of everyone in the room, because I'm a red, and historically I would have took over the room and probably created a few SPOs myself, because there'd be background. And I can't tell Carl that he's headstrong. He wants to do it this way. But so I think it's that openness to listen to everyone's opinion, really. Whether it's good or bad at the start, let's get it all out and see if it's clean data or not. If it's clean, then they're not an SPO. They're actually really good. And if it's just emotion, then it gets parked in they've got to prove it nice and early. So that's the way we started to handle it. And hopefully the SPOs could become actually that worry hat that's in the room at the right time, rather than it be at the wrong time, not being listened to, would what I'd say.
Yeah. Well, that's a brilliant point to wrap on there. Yes, slow down, speed up sometimes, and that openness to opinion, and giving people again that space to be heard, and that space to maybe be to be listened to, and to allow that development, and that comes for everyone involved in that room. Carl, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast show. It's been absolutely stunning to listen to your learning. I'm gonna put it there. You're learning from your experience. You're learning from the sponge that you've been, and the reflective nature that you have to listen, and to want to be better, and want to reach ultimately operational excellence. So thank you once again.
No, really enjoyed it, Matt. Thank you very much.